So, Tatty, I've got a few questions for you. And the first one is very easy, I hope. What is the Brook Street Band?
Okay, I'll do my best, Callie. The Brook Street Band, well, it's a continuo-led ensemble. It's a chamber music group, largely, sort of 90% of the time, 95% of the time. Mixed format, but most often either two violins and continuo or flute, stroke recorder, and violin and continuo. Often we work with singers, and a couple of times a year we expand to a larger orchestral forces, sometimes working with choirs. But it's a flexible lineup of musicians specialising in playing music of the 18th century, largely on historical instruments.
Great. And when did it start?
Well, the date itself is slightly shrouded in the mystery of my mind, it was 96, 97, 1996 and 1997. I believe its first concert was on the 2nd of March, 1997. And it was founded very much at the end of my time studying as a postgraduate student at the Royal College of Music and desperate to play chamber music.
And why Brook Street Band? Why the Brook Street Band? It's an unusual name. We often get asked this at concerts, I know. So I know the Brook Street bit is because that's the street in London where Handel lived. He doesn't live there anymore.
Well, I think he does. I think he's still there.
But why the Brook Street Band?
Why the word band, I suppose you mean, because as you say, people often ask us at concerts, why are you a band? Or a couple of times I've even had people say, are you a rock band? Do you play rock music? Well, first and foremost, band, because I like alliteration. BSB, Brook Street Band. I love that. But there is a historical context as well. It's not just something plucked from thin air. Musicians in the 17th and 18th century were often called bands, although it has to be said in this instance, band refers more commonly to brass and woodwind players. String players didn't tend to be associated into bands. But there is definitely a historical precedent for musicians going under that title in the period that we're talking about.
Great. And really the last question is how? Why did you want to start a ensemble focusing on the music of Handel particularly? And how did it come about?
That's quite a big question. Why and how? Well, I suppose I've been brought up in a family of musicians. My grandparents were chamber musicians, William Pleath the cellist and Margaret Good the pianist. So I'd just grown up around that. I didn't hear them play much because they were largely retired by the time I came to be involved in music. But it was just, I suppose, part of my story. And they had loved chamber music, and for them it was the sort of highest ideal. And so it was always something that was encouraged in our family. For my grandparents, that had been their highest form of musical expression, basically, their partnership together, finding somebody that you wanted to make music with that became your sort of musical soulmate. And they very much encouraged me. They gave me the money initially to set up the band. I was visiting them one day, and I remember presenting me with a cheque for £750, and they said, use this to start up the band, to do what you need to do, be it pay for some rehearsals or some publicity material. And that came at a time shortly after where I'd actually been to Brook Street, Handel's house, where you and I believe he still lives, of course. And I'd been taken around 25 Brook Street when it was still a hard hat zone before it became developed as a museum. And this would have been either November 94 or November 95. It was when I was at college, and Julianne Sadie came to the Royal College of Music and gave a lecture about the museum. And at the end, I shyly went up to her and asked if I could talk to her a bit further about it. And she invited me to come and visit the site, which was no electricity. It had been broken into shortly before, the week before, I think, and there were fireplaces had been stolen. It was quite eerie, actually. I remember we were both a little bit jumpy. You had to go in behind kind of scaffolding and panelling and use torches. But it's a memory that stayed with me forever. And actually, I sound a bit bonkers here, but I felt very close to Handel being there and being in that place. And Julie's always been a mentor for us and for me in particular. And so I suppose that and my grandparents at the same time that made me think, let's give this a go. And that's it.